Hey, good morning, Saints. We've got an interesting set of events going on here. There was a article published in WorldNet Daily yesterday. Saudi, Sudan, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain cut ties to Iran. And what I think is interesting on this um, is that this might be pointing to Daniel chapter 11. And there's also, I'll give you some historical context in a second here, but there's this confederation that's acting, against Iran, and then there's the other faction, the Russia, Iran, Syria, uh, you know that grouping, Iraq, that grouping of nations that are now forming together, on the auspices of fighting the rebel groups warring against Bashar al-Assad and supposedly warring against ISIS as well. And so there was two groups here, one in the north, one in the south. And that's what triggered this, because Daniel chapter 11 is exactly that, saying, well, first in the first 25, 30 verses, at a minimum, it records in what you might say is excruciating detail the actual history that happened after the death, really, of Alexander the Great. He had four generals, and his kingdom, Alexander the Great's vast kingdom, was split up among the four, but there was two predominant ones: the Seleucid dynasty north of Israel, and the Ptolemy dynasty, which was to the south. And in Daniel 11, in the first bunch of verses, and this is an excellent study if you just put it into the Google and look for the fulfillment of Daniel 11. If I remember this right, there's like 130 specific details that were fulfilled in order. And the fulfillment came around this span of time when there was no prophets in the land of Israel anymore. The fulfillment. So the last book in the Old Testament was written, I think the ending date was targeted around 395 BC, 400 BC, something like that. And these events that are described in Daniel 11 really flow through right up until, well, it goes through to the end times, but the historical already fulfilled part goes right up and through this reign of Antiochus Epiphanes. And he was the guy that came into Jerusalem, actually invited in, as I understand it, by the Hellenized Jews. The Greek apostate Jews invited him in, and then he immediately banned the practice and the worship of Judaism. He set himself up in the temple of God. He put up a statue of Zeus in the temple of God. And he's always used as this nearly perfect prototype of the end times Antichrist, because the same thing is predicted to happen here, or prophesied, I should say, it's a better way, prophesied to happen in the Bible. And so this is really curious then. Daniel 11 starting, in like verse 40 for sure, we're in the end time events, because it starts by saying at the time of the end, and then it goes into this description of what's going to happen. But it's patterned off of what had happened in the history with the kings of the north and the kings of the south, the Seleucid dynasty and the Ptolemies. And so we're looking for that pattern, and here you go. Here's a grouping. Now there's not one king here, but there's a grouping led by the Saudis in the south. And there's another group currently led by Russia, with Iran in the north. And so I thought, wow, is this Daniel 11 shaping up to happen? And so let's go into scripture. Let's read through. I think I learned some interesting things here myself going into this. And so let's read through parts of Daniel 11 and take a look at some of the scriptures here. And just, one more thing to watch here, saints. It's one more sign. And to me, this is like one of the amazing signs, because if I got the context right, the actual fulfillment of these future verses in Daniel 11 is the second half of the tribulation. And yet, when you see some of these things already forming, it just makes me think, wow, one more reason why you can be confident we're very, very close to the edge is because you see these things that, are second half of the tribulation potentially forming now. And so let's go take a look at scripture. Okay. I never really know where to start to get the best context. I want to point something out before I go to where I wanted to go, because I'm thinking about who's going to, debate with me about where I'm starting. And I'm not that worried about it, but interpretation's important, right? And so 1 Thessalonians 5, but of the times and seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. So the context is the coming of the day of the Lord. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction come upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Now, I think that's pretty clear. It goes on to describe that there's the we and the they, and Paul's encouraging the church in Thessalonica here to be part of the we, because as he just described in the prior verses there in 1 Thessalonians 4, he talks about the rapture of the church. And so the day of the Lord coming, pre-tribulation rapture, right? 1 Thessalonians 4, he talks about the rapture right away. In 1 Thessalonians 5, he talks about not having to tell them about the times and the seasons, because he's talking about the day of the Lord coming. And the very next statement is, when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman. So the travail, the birth pangs, as it's translated in a bunch of chapters, a bunch of verses, is the tribulation period. Now, we see things right now like an increase in earthquakes and volcanoes and mass fish kills and all that, and animal kills. But the travail is actually, according to my best understanding, starting with the tribulation period, because it's of such a higher magnitude than what we see today. In this class I do on Sundays, I kind of told them I think we're in the Braxton Hicks of the labor pains, and because when the real ones start, there's no question. It's it's orders of magnitude beyond Revelation 6 even. The great earthquake you see there in the sixth seal, every island and mountain moved. Well, what's the magnitude of that earthquake? The earthquake that caused the Fukushima disaster was 9.0. It moved the island 8 inches, I think, something like that. But in Revelation 6, that great earthquake, every island and mountain moved. How big is that earthquake? Okay, so we got orders of magnitude difference. And that's likened now to the travail upon a woman, to the birth pangs. So, okay, I hope you're with me now, because when we get to Matthew, he's going to talk about the birth pangs, and I want you to have some confidence that where I'm jumping in is in the tribulation period, because that's really the context for almost all of Matthew 24. Okay, so here we go. Let's step into this. So Jesus is answering the sign of his coming in the end of, and it's really the end of the age. And he answers, take heed that no man deceive you. Many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and deceive many. And you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you not be troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Nation must rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes, diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Okay, so if you combine this with 1 Thessalonians 5, if these are the beginning of sorrows, you're already in the tribulation. I hope you're following me. And it happens to flow in order here, really starting with verse 4 down with seal 2 through seal 6. Okay, so if you got that, let's come down to 11, because by the time you get down to 11, you're coming into the middle point of the tribulation period, okay? And what do we have in 11? And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many, and because of iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. Well, that's one more indicator, because you notice here how we're in the tribulation period. We're in Matthew's gospel, the gospel to the Jewish people. And you can see here how you could lose your salvation during the tribulation period, because we're finishing the last 7 years of the dispensation of the law. And under time of Moses 4, right, the Spirit could come upon people, but they could lose it. And it's being pictured here that this potentially could happen again, because you have to endure to the end to be saved, right? You have to endure whether they put you to death or you come to the end of the tribulation period. And the gospel of the kingdom, well, what's that? That's the millennial kingdom, right? Shall be preached to all the world for a witness to all nations, and then the end shall come. And who does that preaching? You've got the 144,000 sealed Jewish people from Revelation 7. You've got the eagle, which we know is a heavenly angelic thing in Revelation 8 that's preaching the eternal gospel to the entire world. So there's the gospel being preached here is the coming kingdom, the millennial reign. Then it says, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel. So notice, yet future is the way Christ is talking about it. And it's yet future at the midpoint, as he's discussing the midpoint of the tribulation. Stand in the holy place. So there, the temple has to be there. Okay, so I think that's kind of key. Then let them which be in Judea flee to the mountains. Let them which are on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, right? And so he's talking about, now the Jewish remnant is going to be sheltered. Many say in Petra. So you see how this abomination of desolation is pretty much in the middle of the tribulation period. And let's just get a confirmation of that. The temple is important here, and the fleeing to the mountains is important. So let's go to Revelation 11. We just need one verse here to show it. And before you get to Revelation 11, right, you've had all the seals and the trumpet judgments, and then you get this, and there was given to me a reed like a rod, and an angel stood and said, rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and them that worship therein. So there, the temple has been built basically at the midpoint of the tribulation, okay? And then in 12, like I say, another confirmation. And to the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, that she'll be nourished for a time, times, and half a time from the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that might cause her to be carried away by the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and opened her mouth, and swallowed up the flood the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. And I love this last verse because it shows that the children of Israel have accepted Christ, at least the remnant have accepted Christ by this point in the tribulation. Okay, saints, so let's go to Daniel 11 now. And I want to go down to like verse 30, but this is the part that was kind of getting to me this morning. Because the classic interpretation, I think, would have the Antichrist being pictured in the book of Daniel further down, further down in the chapter. Let me show you something first before we start reading again here. So a lot of the commentaries, and this is going from recollection, so don't hold me to this, but a lot of them put this whole situation with the Antichrist rising and all this down, starting like in Daniel 11 verse 35, because it says, and some of them of understanding shall fall to try them and to purge and to make them white even to the time of the end, because it's yet for appointed time. And they pick up on that saying, well, there's the end times, but let's think about this, because Jesus in Matthew 24 said the abomination of desolation was yet future. And so you got to back up at least, let's come back to, I don't know where to back up to. That's the problem. So let's go to verse 30. For the ships of Shittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even turn and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate, and such as do wickedly against the covenant he shall corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. Now, I'm just even looking here at the study notes in my study Bible, and it's saying, well, this is what happened, that the Roman armies, ships of Chittim, came against Antiochus Epiphanes when he tried to attack Egypt. And the history is just being recounted right here. And then those that will strong will do exploits. That's the Maccabean revolt, and they go down. It's exactly fulfilled in history. And yet, Jesus said that when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, that verse in 30, that the Jewish, remnant should go flee. And so this is all yet future as well. And that's where I'm struggling, because how far back do you go? And the other thing I'm noticing as I'm reading this to you here is, if this is the Roman armies, or the, if it's patterning the same way, let's put it that way, if there's ships that come against him, and if the him's the Antichrist, because this is the verse with the abomination of desolation, how much further? So he's also talking about that he'll have indignation against the holy covenant. And that just struck me as, we know from Daniel chapter 9 that the midpoint of the tribulation, he's going to break the covenant that he confirmed with the many. And that's what I think we're seeing right here. So this is really, I'm picking up some new stuff, and I'm trying to process in real time while I talk to you, which is probably not that good of a plan. But at a minimum, saints, I would say for Daniel chapter 11, when we want the end times picture, you're at least coming back to verse 30. And what's in my mind right now is, I don't know how much further back you can go, or you should go, in terms of, Antiochus Epiphanes was being described going back several more verses. And so is it the entire reign and action of Antiochus Epiphanes? Does all of it pattern the Antichrist? That's what's in my brain. But I guess we don't know that. We don't know, where to chop that off, except for Jesus himself said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, that the remnant should flee. I'm just noticing here that he's also coming back and he's breaking the covenant. And so you at least got to come back here, to verse 30, 31, where, the abomination, where they take away the daily sacrifice and place the abomination that maketh desolate. All this, I think you got to say, is yet future. Okay. And then he shall do wickedly against the covenant and shall corrupt by flatteries, but the people that do not know their God shall be strong and do exploits. So, yes, the Maccabees revolted and did exactly this. This is what's interesting to me. But yet there's going to be a future time Maccabean-like revolt. I think that's cool. And they that have understanding among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword and by flame, by captivity and spoil many days. And you guys know I did a couple of videos. I know some people unsubscribe from my channel. I don't know how much of this is controversial, and I'm making people mad if they just get bored with my Bible exegesis kind of videos. But so they're taken in captivity, and two different videos I walked through, especially Amos chapter 5, and I forget where the other verse was, Micah, I want to say, or something like that, where it shows the Jews being led captive. Oh, maybe that's Zechariah, being led captive in the tribulation period, all the way back. In the one case it says beyond Damascus, and the other case it says all the way unto Babylon. And here it is again. It's a small reference, but we're in the midpoint of the tribulation, and it's saying, that the people, yet they shall fall by the sword, and by flame, and by captivity, and by spoil many days. And this is the Jewish people, the believers, because it's those with the understanding. Now when they fall, they should be helped with little help, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries. And some of them with understanding shall fall, to try them, to purge them, to make them white, even to the time of the end. And there you go. So I think what we're getting here is a picture of the captivity of some of the Jews and the persecution of the Jews comes right on the heels of the covenant being broken, which fits with Daniel chapter 9. And the covenant's being broken here in Daniel 11:30 as well. And then the sanctuary is polluted. So this is exactly the pattern. That's why Jesus said this was yet future. Then you got your exploits of the Jewish believers, like a Maccabean revolt in the latter days. And then you got some of them being taken even into captivity. And we know from Zechariah 13 that 2/3 of the Jewish people died during this period of time. So that's right in here where we're talking about that the believers are falling and very few will help. Okay. And so that's, making them white, purging them. This is the Jewish people, because it's yet for appointed time. The king shall do according to his will, and shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. Well, bam, now I'm having a hard time holding myself back. So verse 36, till the indignation be accomplished. Daniel chapter 9, where he's given the vision of this last 7-year period. The final statement here is, and he shall confirm a covenant with many for a week. That's what we just read there. In the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. So That was verse 30 and 31. The overspreading of the abominations will make it desolate even until a consummation, and that determined shall be poured out on the desolate. And that's just what we're reading here in 11, verse 36. Hope this isn't bugging you that I'm going back and forth. And until the indignation be accomplished. I think that's neat. Okay. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall magnify himself above all. And that's, again, he's probably not of a classic current faith system, because, in the case of Islam, they worship Allah. In the case of, whatever else, Christianity or Catholicism, it'd be, the God of, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And here he's going to set himself up as God. But in his state, he shall honor the God of forces. It just means, he wants worship for himself, and he's going to honor the God of forces, the God whom his fathers knew not shall honor with gold, silver, precious stones, and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds. With a strange God shall acknowledge and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. And that's, the division of the land to Israel is what causes God's judgment. And we see that in Zechariah as well. At the time of the end, the king of the south will push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind. So there's three warring factions then. The king of the south is now mentioned again, and that's why I thought that article was so interesting, is there's this grouping of nations that are organizing south of Israel, and the king of the north shall come against him, and the him in context, the antecedent, is the Antichrist, with chariots and horsemen and many ships, and he shall enter into countries and overflow and pass over, and he shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, Edom, Moab, the children of Ammon. So Jordan escapes. He shall stretch forth his hand upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasuries of gold, silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians, will be behind him. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. And is that the kings that come out of China? We see that in Revelation. Talks about the kings of the east and the drying up of the Euphrates and all this. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury and destroy, utterly take away many. And he shall plant the tabernacle of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to an end, and none shall help him. And we know that's the ending of the deal is, he's got his palace between the seas. That's right there in the land of Israel, the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean, which is where Jerusalem is. And that's where he's going to put his tabernacles, right? But there, in the end, will come when Christ returns, and nobody shall help him. So, I think this is interesting, saints, as we see this formation to the south, and there's already been a formation to the north of a grouping. Now, there's not a king, as far as I know, of the north or of the south right now. But that grouping is really interesting to me, that this is forming, and we see it now. And I hope I was able to show you that the context of when that happens is the midpoint of the tribulation and afterwards. I know there's some teaching out there on the internet right now that says that, we're right in the middle of Daniel chapter 11. And I just don't think that's the case. You got to, take all of these biblical markers and put them together. So that's what I got for you today, saints. Keep looking up. I mean, it's just amazing that the Lord is leaving us here long enough to see all this stuff form, even though I know most of us long to be home so bad. We're getting weary. At least I got to admit, I'm getting a little weary Um, you know, unfortunately, it's slowing down my Bible study and some things because I just think, oh, come on, Lord, and yet, we're told we're supposed to just keep pressing on till the end. But I got to admit, I'm getting weary. This stuff gets me fired up because you see the coming fulfillment of God's word, and it just, it's amazing that He's letting us see this stuff. And so all praise and glory to Him, right, saints? God bless you. Have a great week.